everybody. We are having some major technical difficulties today. Our Zoom links wouldn't work, our Be Live links wouldn't work. Um, so this is definitely been a challenging day, technology wise. Um, so so I'm just gonna go ahead and start today's power hour. I know we're really late today getting started, but like I said, we had a lot of technical problems. So unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to have all the guests that I wanted. I had set up for Bobby and Dahi Tihi and North Star to be on as well as some other people, and we were going to do a virtual rites of passage ceremony. And so what I'm going to do is just change it up a little bit, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the roles of young women and of women in our communities. And then next week we will hopefully not have as many technical issues, and we will do an actual rites of passage ceremony. I think that one of the things that we have to do in today's society is we have to change the way we do things. You know, we normally um, would have had, people come together and had a ceremony and had a circle and prayer and a meal, but because of COVID we're not able to do that. And so I wanted to just still have a ceremony for my daughter, because when I was one time I was over on the Kalispell reservation, and we were looking at a longhouse, and one of the elders there told me, because I asked her, I said, well, what do we do for rites of passage? Because I don't know. I didn't go through a rites of passage when I, started my period. It was shameful. I was scared, and I didn't really, like, my mom gave me the stuff, for a period, but I didn't really know or understand what that meant and why we have periods. And so one of the things that I asked her was, if we don't know how to do a rites of passage ceremony, what do we do? And I thought it was so amazing, because she shared with me that we don't have to, like, for many of our tribes, we've lost those teachings. Those teachings are gone because we weren't allowed to practice those teachings. We weren't allowed to do rites of passage, or to sing our songs, or to, learn those ways. When the black robes came, when our children were put in boarding schools, all those teachings went away. And so in order to survive, we had to adapt and assimilate into the white culture. And so she told me, she goes, we just have to try. We have to try to bring back those teachings and those ceremonies in the best way that we can. And it might not be perfect, but we have to at least try. And she said, so whatever you decide to do, just pray about it, and that will be good. And your daughter will at least know that she is a woman. And so she told me I should invite other women that I respect to come and to share with my daughter what they are willing to teach her and what she needs to know to be a woman. And my daughter Northstar was very fortunate that she has grown up with her best friend Dahi Tihi White, Bobby and Larry White's daughter. And when Dahi became a woman, Bobby and Larry invited my daughter and I to go with them to Navajo, to Dene country, to experience this rites of passage. And at that time, I couldn't leave my children, and I had started my moon, and so I wasn't able to go, but North Star was able to go, and she was so impacted by the ceremony that the Dene people continue to carry on for their women, for their young girls. And I remember North Star sending me pictures, and and Bobby just sent me some pictures of Dahi and her family as they were combing her hair, as they were preparing the cake that the Dene people have, that they make as to become a woman. There's a cake that they make, and the run and waking up at sunrise. And the Dene people are very fortunate that their ancestors have been able to continue these teachings. And I feel blessed that our daughter was able to go through that with Dahi Tihi, because she got to learn a lot about what it means to be a woman. And as we do trainings with the Native Wellness Institute, Charlie Tail Feathers, he always, had me speak about water. And because we are givers of life as women in our tribes, in our nations, we are the ones that carry life forward. And so Charlie always asked me to speak on behalf of the water and on behalf of our women. And one of the most powerful teachings that I was taught was that when we are on our moon, when we are on our period, as they call it in society, that as women, for the whole month, we take on all the emotion in our families, all of the anger, all of the hurt, all of the happiness, all of the emotion in our families, where we take in that emotion. And when we come to that time of the month, Grandmother Moon, we follow our grandmother. And in those teachings, once a month, we cleanse ourselves. Once a month, we cleanse ourselves of all that emotion. And so a lot of times people will say, oh, yeah, she's on her rag, and, she's being really, like grouchy. And, they'll say things like that. And it's, in our traditional teachings, it's because we're letting go of all that emotion. We're letting go of all the hurt and all the pain in our families. And so that's why during that time, we're very powerful. And if you guys that are watching, if you have teachings, share the teachings in the chat, because we all can help each other to bring back these rites of passage traditions and ceremonies. We need to help each other. And so during that time of our monthly of our period, when we're releasing all of that, we were taught that we shouldn't dig roots, and that we shouldn't pick huckleberries, and that we shouldn't touch the meat. And in a lot of our tribes, the woman who was on her monthly time wouldn't even sleep next to her husband, or wouldn't be with her husband, and would be away from the camp, and would have a sweat that was set aside just for her. And that's where she would go through that time to process her emotions and process the feelings of her family. And in today's society, it's really hard for us to be able to step away from everything during that time of the month, and to be alone, and to go inside of ourselves and think about those things. Sorry, my phone rang. So, did I lose everybody? Okay, sorry, my phone rang, and I thought I had it on where nobody could call. So we have those times of the month that that we as women have. And one of the teachings that I also received from my brother, who was an Earth Ambassador, who he's from Lethbridge, Alberta, Canada, and I was traveling up there, and we were building a sweat. I was helping his tribe and his people build a sweat. And he said, "Hey, LoVina," he said, "what do you think is the most important ceremony that we can ever do in our lifetime?" And I said, "How about like a sweat lodge? Like, well, we're building a sweat lodge. Do you think a sweat lodge?" And he said no. And I said, "A Sundance?" And he said no. And so I said a couple other ceremonies that I knew. And he said, he said the most sacred ceremony that we can ever do in our lifetimes is have sex. Because when we have sex, we have the ability to create life. And that is the most sacred gift that our Creator has given to us, is the ability to create life. And I never thought of sex like that. I never thought of sex as a ceremony. And it was such a big teaching for me that day. And I was so grateful to my brother for that teaching, because I looked at sex differently from there. When I was growing up and being raised in the Catholic Church, we were, I don't, you were taught like you can only, like if you have sex, then that means you have to marry that person or you're married. And it's I don't know. I guess, I just didn't have very many viewpoints of sex, because we didn't talk about it. Nobody talked about it with me. And, it was almost like taboo, I guess, to talk about. And so I didn't know a lot about it. And it's so important that, now that I'm an adult, it's kind of funny, because now that that I'm an adult, like I have really in-depth discussions with my nephew and my nieces and my all, like the other day we were huckleberry picking, and I was talking to my nephew Francis, and I was telling Francis all about like, as a young man, like how when you have sex with a woman, like you have to, make sure you find the certain, places that will stimulate her. And I was trying to explain it, and Francis was so uncomfortable. He was like, "Auntie," and I was like, "No, Francis, you need to understand this stuff." But, like, it's so many of our people, like, we don't like to talk about it. And, but it's super important to talk about. And, and preserving yourself, and that, one of my teachers even had shared with me that, when you have sex with somebody, you're actually giving them a part of your spirit. And so and you have a soul tie with them, because it's so sacred that when you have sex with somebody, you share a soul tie, and then you're connected to them. And so then you think about all the people that they've had sex with, and that you're connected to all of those people. And it's really, like when you think about that, it's a lot to take on. And so we want to teach our children that, your body is sacred. Your body, your mind, body, and spirit are very sacred. And we need to respect ourselves, and we need to be able to, really be considerate of who we're with. Or if we make that decision, it needs to be, made with caution. And so, there's just so many different teachings, and I think it's important that we talk about these things, because one of the reasons I think we struggle to talk about it is because of the boarding schools, and because of the taboo that was put on sex and sexuality and who we are. And but I think in today's society, it's important that we talk about it and that we acknowledge it and that we try to help our young people to bring back those rites of passage. I know growing up in the Spelum and in the Nimipu way, that when a young man goes out and gets his first deer, they're taught that they take every part of that deer and they gift it to elders. And even the gun that they shot the deer with is to be given away as gifts. And that's something that I always remembered hearing in the longhouse, or hearing from the elders of the longhouse. And so those rites of passage in the longhouse are very important for young men and for young women. And going out root digging, the first time my girls went out root digging with my sister Mary Lee, we all dug, they all dug their one root, and we all stood in a line, and we sang a song to honor that first root and to honor that our girls were becoming women, that they were going to provide food for their families. And we put so much love into the food when we go to gather it, when we go to gather the roots and the berries and all of those foods. And all that love that we put into the foods goes into our families. And it's a connection that we have with Mother Earth and with the food and with each other. And it's so all of our love is put into the food when we gather it. And our young girls, and Mary Lee, she does such an incredible job down in Yakima, and she's like awakening the spirits of the young girls there through the swan dancers and through taking them to go get their first roots and their first berries. And even recently, she brought Janelle, and they went down, or Joelle, and they went down and got her salmon, and they went, it's just all these different things that the teachings of our ancestors, that we're starting to see them come back. And that's what we need to do, is we need to bring those teachings back. And it's just so important for our overall well-being, for our mental, physical, spiritual, and emotional well-being, that we bring those teachings back, that we bring those connections back, and, find out what are the teachings from your tribe. And if you don't have those teachings, then, reach out to other tribes, just like our tribe did when we were bringing back the canoes. We had to, reach out to another tribe, to Sean Brigman, to he came and he helped show us how to make a sturgeon nose canoe. And we brought back the dugout canoes in the Pacific Northwest. The dugout canoes have come back, and that is such a rites of passage for so many of our young people, because when they go out onto the water, they connect back to who they are, to who Creator intended us to be. And those teachings are awakening. Our spirits are awakening. And it's beautiful to see all of these teachings that are starting to come back. Yesterday, Theta had a special guest, and they talked about rites of passage and how important it is to bring back those rites, and to bring back courtship, and to bring back all of the teachings of our ancestors. And so it's just, it's a blessing for us to be able to be who we are, to be indigenous to this land, to be indigenous to, this place. And even more recently, we've seen how many of our tribes are starting to bring back land acknowledgement, and that before meetings start, before gatherings start, we are acknowledging the land. And some of the most beautiful land acknowledgements that I've ever been a part of were from Australia. And with the Yorta Yorta people in Australia, our brother Joe Day, We went there and did some trainings with our brothers and sisters of the Aboriginal people in Australia, and the land acknowledgement that they did before every gathering was so beautiful and was so honoring to their ancestors and to the place that they live. And the smudging with the gum tree leaves that they did, it was so similar to our teachings. Everything that they did showed a connection to the land as Aboriginal people, and it was the most beautiful teachings. And our Maori brothers and sisters, many of the people that we work with in the Native Wellness Institute, Josh and Jordan, they're Maori, and so they've taught us, and they have special songs and special ceremonies, and all these songs and ceremonies, they're the key, they're the answer to the trauma that we have. Bringing back our culture and our language and our identity is the answer to diabetes and heart disease and drugs and alcohol and all the hurt and pain that we suffer. Those are the things that are going to help us. Those are the things that are going to bring us peace and allow us to love again, to love ourselves. And so all of these teachings that we have are so important, and they're so special to our people and to our tribes. And I hope that we can work together to bring these teachings back. And I just, as we're here today, and I'm so honored and happy to be here as a part of the Native Wellness Institute team, because we have to continue to bring light and love into the world. We have to continue to honor our ancestors and honor the teachings that they've given to us. And so I want to sing a song for everybody today. I want to sing a song and offer prayers and strength to all of those who are out there who are lost, or feel lost. And I have my husband who's out there right now, Dwayne, and he's riding a bike and he's running for the murdered and missing Indigenous women, for all of the families who are still searching for their loved ones, for all of the families who are still grieving for those that have passed on and are now our ancestors. And, he was just extremely passionate to do this run for murdered and missing Indigenous women. And we all have passions and we all have love. And this rites of passage for North Star, it was on my heart for the last year. And, I wasn't able to pull it together. I wasn't able to make it happen. And that's why when I had this chance, I really, I wanted to do this for my daughter. I wasn't able to do it for Tawaya, and I wanted to do this for North Star. And I want to be able to do this for Dolly and for Unity and Lene and Araya and Baby Loves. And it's just going to take one day at a time, just trying to do the best that we can. And that's all we can do, is just do the best that we can. So I'm going to close this power hour with a song and just ask that it would just help all those who are struggling today, all those who are having a hard time, to just send it out in love and light and hope and faith for some strength for each and every one of you. And so, Lim Lim Chinchas Pa'us Talichas, thank you from my heart for today. And I'll just offer this song. Oh, Lim lim kukut katiaya and chaspaus talichast. Lim lim shin. We thank you for today's power hour, for joining us. Sorry we were late. Sorry we had technical difficulties. That's just the way it goes sometimes. We thank the Indian Collective for sponsoring our power hours, for all of the work that Jolene and Shailene do behind the scenes. We thank you and we honor and give respect to you. And so we just want to say Lim Lims and Chaspa Us Talichas.